the pizza. Yeah, I got a great introduction from Adri already. My name is Timo Stark. I'm from Nuremberg, actually. Yeah, I'm currently working for a company building more embedded software, but we also build platforms that are responsible for like receiving or exchanging these kind of embedded firmware files. And all of this tech stack is actually based on Docker heavily and some Azure stuff and C# and JavaScript frameworks in the front end. So basically what you need to build a web application and a tech stack there. And one of the important things we will talk about today is what Docker does with MCP, what actually MCP is, for what it can be used, since when it's a thing. Yeah, so, and if you have questions along the way, just ask them. And as we have like a limited amount of time, I basically made the decision just to start from the very beginning what MCP actually is and what does it do in terms of AI and Docker, and how can you use MCP in your daily business and in your applications to, I don't know, more or less jump on the AI train and do something that actually is helpful for your company. So if that is not something you are interested in, because we are all experts in MCP and we all know everything about MCP and why is it a thing, then we can do some practical stuff as well. Just tell me what, if we should start with a very basic introduction, we will do this, and then you will leave today after this session at least with a good understanding about what all this AI MCP stuff actually is. Is that a good idea? Okay. Yeah, reason is I don't think it's useful for all of you if I do a 20-minute demo about what MCP gateway can actually technically do. We will look into this in a minute as well. But for me, it's more important that you understand the core concepts behind it and for what it can be used. So we will jump into this one. So it's like in the school, we will have a quick video with 1 minute, 50 seconds, something about MCP. But before we do this, MCP is something that is connected with the AI fancy tooling. I think that's something we already aware of. But it's one of the short terms for something like RAG and MCP and all this, and LLMs and all these kind of three-letter abbreviations in this field that we probably will come across when we work with AI and LLMs. And usually we are not, when I do this kind of intro session, many people have heard about it, but 0 to, let's say, a maximum handful out of 20 or 30 have really played around with it and understand for what it can be used. Okay, so a year back, and I'm not, this is interesting because when we're talking about things in the programming world and open source community, most of the time in the JavaScript area, a year is a decade in terms of JavaScript frameworks and stuff. And now as we have AI available, a year is also a decade in the AI field. If we talk about something that is a year ago, just look for the progress we have made with ChatGPT 4 and 5. It's like, it's unbelievably crazy what's the difference between the models in ChatGPT 4 and 5. But this is a different topic. So a year ago, there was a strong technically need to let different AI applications and tooling and skills, if you will, communicate with each other. So because we all know this ChatGPT interface, right? Where we can type something in, like a prompt, and then we will receive an answer. So this is one very strong thing from a large language model to basically understand the written word of a human being and translate it in metadata that a computer can actually understand. This is one of the very huge strengths of a large language model. Paired with specific training data and knowledge, it will receive this kind of knowledge and build from metadata and structured data something that is in a specific language, a written sentence. So it feels like a natural communication between another human being, even if it's a system. Okay, but it's super cool that we have large language model that had some training data, but retraining and do some fine-tuning of models is something you definitely don't want to do in a daily business. You usually would like to just pick up a large language model, even with, or even better with an API from Claude or ChatGPT from OpenAI or Microsoft or Gemini or something that say, you know what, this is a large language model that can do some basic stuff, right? And I can interact with it. Good. So, but for the business, it is not just good enough if I can ask, for example, ChatGPT about something that was written in a PDF from 20 years ago. So ChatGPT, for example, needs some interfaces to get data from the real world. Even if you ask ChatGPT for the weather or something that must be looked up at the internet, is something where the large language model or this AI thing must go outside of its own training data, connect to another system, retrieve information, put everything together, and then send it back to the customer. Okay. And these set of skills or tools was implemented the hard way by a lot of engineers saying, you know what, I call an external service if the LLM thinks it needs a call to a web service, then get the weather data, reply with the JSON back to the LLM. The LLM can understand the JSON data and can send it back to the user in a nicely formatted way. Okay. So, but if the next user wants to do that, it has to implement the same technical things than the user or the engineer that created this the first time. So it's basically what we already do today in a world where we say, you know what, we implement things repeatedly, everybody by its own. So, and we stopped doing this a long time ago, like 15 years ago, by creating frameworks, by creating libraries, by creating packages and SDKs that you do not have to do this by yourself, right? So the simplest thing is always you connect to a database from Node.js or PHP or something. You use a library or a thing that's provided by the language producers that you connect to a MySQL database or Postgres. You're not writing the driver by yourself every single time you do this. That would be stupid. So, and this is the minimalistic way of getting something that somebody else created for you and just use it. And this idea was like, it is a success factor in software development that we use libraries and packages that somebody else created for us. So, and therefore, there was a very pressing need of creating something like this generic tooling or generic protocol that let AI applications interact with each other and provide this standard way of communication where one AI application can say, you know what, I have no single idea how to communicate with GitHub or read data from a database or use Grafana to get time series data or graphs or something. But I know that there is another application, another AI application that has access to this data with RAG, for example. So it can do this for us and then just respond back with data so I can actually use it. Okay. And one very important thing, if you build this kind of communication channels, is to define a protocol, to define a common language that both systems can talk to each other and basically understand. I mean, the whole web is working that way. HTTP is a common protocol since more than a decade. So without HTTP, it would be very hard for us to communicate on the web or JSON. It's the bread and butter for most RESTful APIs out there. Have a standard data format that we can exchange data. So, and a year ago, like the maintainers of Claude and ChatGPT and others initialized this protocol, which is MCP, the Model Context Protocol, to define a common way AI applications can talk to each other, interact. So this MCP, that's the very crazy thing. It's like it's a year old. Let me see. I have nope. Yeah, so this is basically how the MCP thing, and this whole thing, the whole concept of MCP was started a year ago and was donated to the yeah. So it started a year ago and was donated to the Linux Foundation just 3 days ago. So this whole MCP project is, so they have founded something that is an VAI part of the Linux Foundation, where OpenAI and the maintainers from Claude and Docker is also a sponsor and a partner of this thing. So, and this is like 3 days ago, or 9th of December, I think. So that means that MCP is now a real standard where the industry relies on and say, you know what, if we would like to interact with AI applications, the common protocol we will use is MCP. And MCP is pretty simple from its components, because you have something that is called, if you will, a server, and it is a client. Okay, a client, of course, is the thing that talks to another provider of a resource, which is the server, and the server can then say, you know what, these are the data, and shares back the response. And I got a very interesting question in one of my previous talks about MCP, because another engineer was saying, you know what, we have implemented now with Parrot and stuff, Rex, which is basically the mechanisms where you can enrich your LLMs and AI applications with non-trained data. If you have a vector database with a lot of support tickets, and you will let your large language model scrape in the support tickets to find the correct answer for a given question, you could use something that's called a RAG to connect this vector database to the LLM, and then the LLM can look into this data source and get an answer and send the data back to the user. And MCP, and that's super important, will not replace this concept of ragging and putting external data sources in. It's basically the default connector now for an application that uses RAG to get information from a vector database and then sends the answer in a common protocol back to the calling party. And these servers on the right side here, they come with something that's called a tool. A tool is something what you have in your toolbox, a hammer, screwdriver, things like that. And it depends on the context. Tools for Git or GitHub, if you have an MCP server, and we will see that in Claude in a minute. If you have an MCP server for GitHub, a common tool is, hey, give me all my repositories. Create a GitHub issue for me. Can you create a pull request from the last commit? Can you close a pull request? Can you merge a pull request? Can you do like whatever you can think of what you can actually do with an API is something that the MCP server can actually do for you. So this is the most important thing. It's like somebody created an MCP server for GitHub where you have to share a personal access token. And inside of the MCP server, which is actually code, it's not like magic or unicorn or something, it's actually code. Behind the scenes, there is an application that will, of course, talk to the GitHub API. I mean, we are all engineers. We understand how systems work. There's no like fancy way of talking to GitHub on a very, I don't know, unicorn magic whatever way, and somehow your, I don't know, pull request is closed or your issue got opened or something. No, there is an actual API call, and this MCP server is literally a wrapper around the GitHub API, but in a way that another AI application can talk into, like, to this server in a standardized way, which is the MCP. And the same thing is for Postgres and SQLite database. At the end, you will issue an SQL query and query your database. I mean, period. That's it, right? The MCP server will receive the request and then transforms it into an SQL query, issue this one at the database, get the response back, and send it back to the calling party. Okay. So and on the other side, we have something that is a client, MCP client. It's basically the other side. It can be something like Claude Desktop or Goose. Goose is one part of the how does it call now? It's the Agentic AI Foundation, AAIF. Okay, it's December 9th, so it's pretty new. So that's even why I have to look things up, because that's pretty hot off the press. So in this Goose thing it's basically a client that you can connect to an LLM, and then it looks similar to Claude, but to be very honest, I haven't used it yet. Okay, so and these are the clients. Okay, so and now talking about, now we understand what is the MCP client, okay, that consumes servers, right? And the server is something that implements some sort of API, but provides a standardized interface so that we can easily connect them to each other. Good. The MCP standard provides SDKs. It's good for us as engineers in, let's say, the most common languages. And I was working for Nginx as an engineer before, and when we talk about most common languages, C is missing here. That's a bummer. TypeScript, Python, Go, Kotlin, Java, Rust, C#, PHP is there, Ruby. Okay, so and these SDKs can be used to implement clients as well as servers. Okay, so if you would like to create an MCP server to do some, I have no idea, to do some stuff. I don't know. If I saw there is an MCP server for your Husqvarna mall or robot, whatever. I have no idea what you would like to get with an, I don't know. Somebody has enough time to create an MCP server that will connect to the Husqvarna API and talk to your mall robot. Cool, perfect. Okay. So and the client as well as the server has this SDK, so you can actually build them. So and why is the Docker part important? So these tools, and this is what we see here. And you know what? The cool thing on Docker Desktop, it's literally a website. So you can use Control plus and minus to make it bigger and smaller. If you have any document presentation and would like to, and you're dumb as me and you're not skilled enough to use this Windows, I don't know. There is some shortcuts where you can zoom in and out with Windows, but I don't know. I can't do this. So that's why I use Control plus and minus. So for example, we have, these are MCP servers, and you can simply install them on something that's called the MCP gateway. And the MCP gateway is basically something that knows all about the tools. So if a client asks the gateway and say, hey, you know what, can you give me a GitHub repository? Then the MCP gateway knows, hey, this is this MCP server, great. And then your credentials and all this stuff is basically configured in the server. It's not in the gateway, but the gateway knows about all the tooling. So you as a client can connect to a gateway. In this regard, it's the Docker MCP gateway, and that registers different servers for you. 1, 2, 3, 150, 300, how many you can think of. So the benefit for you as an engineer is that you do not have to implement the servers by yourself. It's literally something that you can connect to and say, you know what, give me all the tools you have. Let me know what I can do with you. And then you can build different MCP gateways. We have heard about SRE and DevOps and maybe engineering and maybe marketing and something. So you can create a gateway for the SRE team or the DevOps people where you can use an AI application to ask for like dashboard data or for monitoring data from AWS or Azure or something. And the marketing team probably does not need to have access to these kind of technical monitoring data. So you build another MCP gateway for marketing data because the engineers don't need to have access to marketing data, for example. So it's just super easy then for engineers to implement against this MCP servers to get features. And you don't have to implement the racks by yourself. You implement a rack that will talk to, I don't know, your Azure system or to your Grafana or to logs or something. And the other MCP server implements an rack that will connect in the backend to your I don't know, CRM system to get some customer data and stuff. So you don't have to do it. If you would like to make use of it, you simply use this MCP server that is exposed, and you don't have to take care of, okay, how is that implemented, how to send data to the backend system. It's literally consuming a package, basically. And the good thing is with an MCP gateway, you do not even have to host this thing. You just connect to it. And how that technically works, there are two different approaches. So the simplest one, how the gateway works, is over standard in and out. So it's literally a stream communication. And the more advanced technique is with HTTP post requests. And there is one very important sentence in the documentation saying if you implement an MCP server by yourself and you work with a gateway that is connected to the server using standard in and out, make sure that you do not do something like print or console log, because this will literally go to your standard out, and that will crash your the implementation, because the gateway is awaiting a response that is in this JSON format. Okay, so even if you're sending a stream, it's a JSON format. If you print log lines in this JSON format, you will just screw up the whole response. Okay, so be aware of this one. So, and if we click on GitHub here, we have these tools, and that's like fork a repository, get a commit, get a label, get my user profile, get a tag, get teams, members, whatever. So what the server is basically doing is the MCP server is translating whatever is sent by a user into these tools. Because if I type something like, hey, Claude, can you search an issue in one of my GitHub repositories, or can you give me the last 5 GitHub issues and create a summary of what should I do today as an engineer, and what should I pick up, and give me a list of things I have to do. Okay. And this is the need why we need this, right? Because I had conversation with other engineers saying, you know what, why do we need a GitHub MCP server? I could just go in the CLI, create a commit, pull request and something, right? But this is like the single developer, single laptop instance approach, right? But today in this more collaborative world, let's assume we are in a Slack channel, okay? And we do some discussion. Say, hey, we have a bug somewhere because quality assurance or the PM clicked on this and that, and then we had this response, and this is clearly a bug. This shouldn't be looking like this. That's I don't know. There's an object in the front end, and this shouldn't be there. There should be something written. And then you have 2 and 3 engineers discussing with each other. And what AI now can do with the MCP technology is you can I don't know, send an mention to your Claude bot that is using AI and say, hey, you know what, Claude, go to this GitHub repository, and this is the problem we have. Find the bug in the code. So then we'll think about it, and then it will respond into Slack, because you talk to Claude that is connected to an MCP gateway within GitHub tools. So to scratch the code, then it will look through the code, will find the bug, and then we'll use another MCP server to talk to Slack and send the message back to your Slack channel. So that's basically 2 MCP servers in this real world scenario. And then Claude will say, you know what, fine, yeah, I found the bug. It's on line 255 because it's an I don't know, wrong deserialization of something from the backend. Should I open an issue for that? Sure, please open an issue in that GitHub repository that we can fix it, and assign Ali to do it. Using the MCP server, GitHub tools, create an issue, done. You don't even have to log into GitHub manually to do it. And this is where the MCP stuff is creating some real business value for us. Okay, and the Docker MCP gateway is just super important for us because we can browse a catalog of currently over 300 servers that you can just enable. And this is what I mean. It's like a plugin, right? So the GitHub thing was something I've just created this morning and say, or added to this MCP gateway this morning and say, you know what? Now I have my gateway with Docker Hub and GitHub, and I think there was this Husqvarna law thing. Was here, see? MCP server was one out of more. Awesome. That's okay. One installation. Cool. Anyway, so I have my gateway, and my gateway knows about all these cool things. And because I don't want to create let's say a Node.js version of something, we can use just Claude desktop, right? Just install it. And what Claude is doing here, these are basically the connectors, like the skills that Claude has in this configuration. And this MCP Docker is that Claude has access to my MCP gateway. So everything that I will add to my Docker MCP gateway is tools that I can access from my MCP client. Claude in this regard is just an MCP client. Connects to the gateway, and the gateway connects to multiple servers. And here you can see all the different tools I actually have access to. All right, so what we can do is, let's start a new chat and say, hello, always be polite. Can you find a GitHub repository that is something with, I don't know, Nginx WAV, maybe? No? Let's see. I will search GitHub repositories relating Nginx WAV for you. Okay. So now it says M is searching. There are a few Nginx WAV. Perfect. Okay. Amazing. Cool. Okay. So now it's in. Okay, that's not a secret. It's like it's all public repositories. Let's say, can you look? Can you just search in my account? I want to know my own repositories. Okay. So let's see what it's doing. Cool. So this is also funny because it could say, okay, that's a public one. Great. So now let's say, can you list all my private repositories? Let's see, this thing is doing. It's funny. You should. Let me see. List issues. You do have. Oh, that's interesting.
Is the MCP gateway running?
Yeah.
Dedicated.
Yes.
Then challenge is authenticated.
Yeah. Oh. That's funny. Okay. Try harder. So let me see if this is not working. We can look in the other chat. It shouldn't use M, it should use D. That's wrong. It's not using the.
It is MCP Docker.
No, it's saying okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. Cool. Love it. That's the. I love to play around with AI. You're right. Let me try searching your repositories more broadly with private ones. Great. I can see your repositories now. Cool. Here are the private repositories: web, gateway, unit, questionnaire. Oh, Jesus. Wasn't aware that this is a thing still. Nginx info. Cool. Amazing. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So this is basically using an MCP server and Claude as a client to basically connect to GitHub using an access token you provide in the server configuration, and then it can query. Are there any open issues in this one?
What's only?
I think I've created one earlier today using this dude. Nope. Great. It shows 0 open issues. Oh, that's great. Perfect. So, and this is basically how you interact with this MCP server tools then. Let me make this a little bit bigger, because yeah, I can push this to GitHub, but basically that's what we all heard. We have an MCP client, which is the Claude desktop app or extension or your backend agent. So you can implement your clients by yourself, because another engineer was asking, hey, that doesn't, for me, I don't use Claude desktop or something. I have an application. Okay, then go for it. Build your client using an SDK. There's no need to having Claude desktop. An MCP server that processes and exposes tools like Git, DB, fetch, internal APIs. Perfect. So that's basically the MCP client can directly talk to the server. Okay, good. But without a gateway, you see the issue. It's basically one client to one server or one client to another server. Yeah. If you would like to just make use of a bunch of tools, you would like to connect to a gateway. It's similar to what you do with a proxy. Not the same thing, but you can think about it. You connect one server, and this one will direct the traffic to whatever MCP server it thinks is the good one. So this is what we saw. Docker MCP gateway. You will connect from Claude to the MCP, and the MCP knows all the different tools in the different servers. With Docker Desktop, the MCP server is a better feature, so you can enable it, and then it just runs. And then you can click the catalog and say plus, and then you have to configure things with a nice UI, and then you're good. So that's the clicky bunty part. But for production environments, and this is what for me is almost the important part of every presentation I do, that's fine if I can do that with Docker Desktop on my local machine. But if I would like to build what we already mentioned, an MCP service gateway for my SRE team, it doesn't make sense to do this on Docker Desktop, right? We will have this on a server running, I don't know, in Kubernetes or on a VM or on a bare metal server or something that is more production-like than a Docker Desktop with on your local machine. So the good thing is you can do this. You can totally run an MCP gateway on a Linux server without using Docker Desktop. That's definitely a thing. Good for production environments. If you have multiple environments or teams that would like to connect to this gateway, if you're not on a Docker Desktop instance, yeah, the whole security part, of course, that works with MCP as well. And there are basically two different things you can use. This is the standalone way. If you would like just to run an MCP gateway, you type docker run and use the default Docker MCP container. And this servers equal GitHub MCP and whatnot. I would recommend if you go down this road, there is an MCP gateway configuration. It's basically a JSON file or a YAML where you can add all the servers, and then where you can inject like client credentials and the dependencies the server actually has to connect to the GitHub API. Of course, it's authenticated, right? So, so instead of doing this, you would probably end up just passing in the YAML file, and that will configure your MCP gateway and all the servers. It's basically nothing more than what you see in the Docker desktop UI, just in a YAML format, listing the servers, all the configuration items, and that's basically it. Yeah, this is a TypeScript version of a client that will then connect to the gateway using like, yeah, the endpoint over HTTP, and then you can talk to the server and say, hey, I would like to call a specific tool. And in Docker Desktop, you can do something. Let's see. And that's also cool in Docker MCP Gateway. You can do Docker MCP tools ls, I think. Give it a minute. So this is, again, yeah, this is something that is a Docker feature. This is not 100% MCP server thing, because the gateway is something that Docker created for you, where you can add these different servers together and streamline and intercept. That's a Docker thing. That's why the MCP gateway is a very, very cool Docker features to connect servers with clients. And one thing is, if you run the MCP gateway, you can then say, hey, Docker MCP tool list, and this will give you all the tools you actually have available in your MCP servers, plural, that are connected to the gateway. So MCP tools ls give you, I don't know, 72, 150, 300, 1,000, whatever. And then you can, in your client, you can say, hey, I would like to call the gateway and use, I don't know, MCP config set configuration values for this and list processes, good, something like this. And then it will actually do it. Okay. So.
Can I ask a question? The MCP gateway command line that you mentioned,
yeah,
with the Docker, if we give it the YAML file, it will just find the servers and then install them, or should we install them separately?
All right, there are two different ways of starting it. You can use the CLI for MCP, but this is a plugin. Like Docker Compose was a plugin for a long time that you actually had to install manually. And the MCP CLI portion is currently also a plugin that you have to install. So if you do this with the plugin and you type Docker MCP run with the config, then it will basically spin up the MCP container for you. You don't have to do Docker run MCP gateway manually. The MCP command line interface will do this for you.
And the MCP servers, the MCP gateway will install the MCP servers.
Yeah, if you define them in the YAML config, it will do it.
Yes, basically that's the Docker Compose for MCP.
Yes, correct. So, and this is pretty neat, because that means you can just spin it up and give, and I don't know, if we have just have a look at what all the different cool things we have available in the MCP catalog. It's like we have MongoDB, we have all the different kinds of AWS, we have Grafana, there's something with Azure. So I can immediately think of an MCP gateway for DevOps people or SRE, where all our Azure and AWS and maybe Grafana things are basically connected. And then we have a cloud configuration for cloud desktop that is on all SRE people's laptop. And then you have a Slack group where a bot is installed that has access to that servers. So you can simply ask in this Slack channel with an admission to the bot, hey, can you give me the latest 15 warnings or errors from our Azure monitoring service application, yada yada yada. And it will literally think for, let's say, 30 seconds, but you will get a list of the warnings without even clicking and doing things, just because of the MCP server. And Docker makes it super easy to consume different servers because they are basically wrapped in a gateway configuration.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is it part of contract that, for example, with this YAML or JSON configuration for MCP server that you can disable? So you enable specific features of this MCP, or it's not?
No, you can definitely disable features as well.
Oh, that's great, because I don't want, for example,
Yeah.
let it do something, delete database, but like rather, yeah, get some.
Drop database, no problem.
Yeah, definitely, but yeah, shouldn't want it. Awesome. Okay, that's question now answered. Thank you.
So this is make this bigger. This is basically the yeah, this is where the command line plugin lives. Let's see, MCP gateway. This running. So this is where you can disable different servers. Right, and if you do this, the Docker config, let me see. Now we are recording this, and I don't know. Because I think if I do the config read, it will literally print out a YAML file I can use in a standalone gateway server. So I would have to basically remove my GitHub token for that, but I have created it this morning just for the demo, so it wouldn't be a problem, to be very fair. So let me do this.
Yeah,
or let me do it here. Let me do it here because there is no GitHub on this instance. Docker MCP tools ls. We saw MCP config read. Config read. Okay, it's empty. So let's do it here. MCP Docker MCP config read. Interesting. Okay, that's I expected it to print the whole YAML. Read the current configuration of the MCP server ls.
Option to format it.
Anyway, I was just tools ls format JSON here. Server catalog defined by the MCP, enable tools per server.
Oh yeah,
That's what I was looking for, and I thought that it will give me the YAML file that has all these different things in it. But yeah, the MCP CLI several configuration files. The server catalog defined available MCP servers. That's basically like GitHub, Slack, Amazon Web Services, Azure, whatever. Registry to enable servers and the configuration per server. This is basically like your API tokens, usernames, whatever you use to connect to the API. I don't know. SNI strings for database connections, things like that. And tools is enable tools per server. So this is like literally what you was asking for. If I have an DB2, I've just saw on LinkedIn, there's now an Oracle MCP server where you can connect to the database. And if you have, for example, a drop database tool in this MCP server, it would be wise basically to disallow this tooling from, hey, on Slack. Let's see if this works. Hey, Claude, drop the production database from schema, the enter. Thinking, okay, we'll do it. Thank you. Delete it. Should be gone now. Okay, it is gone. Please, I don't know. Use the backup from, okay, don't have access to the backup, do that manually. So, yep, but this is very, very, very exciting stuff, especially the server part. And this is just how the LLM knows about the tooling. So it's a little bigger. So the client asked for the list for the tools, and this is basically default MCP request. Okay, so give a list of tools, then you select the tool, you call it, you get the result. That goes back and forth all the time. And this is what you can see in Claude in these boxes here. That's basically what it's doing. See, it's like calling this tool with this JSON and then getting this response. And the LLM, again, its strength is to extract from metadata information and present it as in a human readable format. Okay. So that's basically what the MCP client is, what the MCP server is, and what Docker MCP gateway in the middle can do to provide you access to multiple servers so that you don't have to configure them by yourself. Any more questions?
One question, is the MCP gateway open source?
No, I don't know.
Is it?
It is. Yeah, it is. The gateway is open source.
Okay.
The LLM, there was one thing, I think the LLM runners are not. But I have to check. Not sure. But the gateway, see. That's the server. Yeah, that is open source. 97% Go, that looks, yeah. More questions?
Any more questions? Thank you.
Have fun playing around with it. That's really funny thing. Thank you.
Like 5 minutes break, probably. Is it recording, I guess?